To me, there are two issues regarding God. One is, does he exist? And then second, if he does exist, what can we know about this being and what he wants? To me, the first question is moot, because the second question, there is no reliable methodology that we can engage in to know, even if we could know that such a being existed, what this being's will is in regard to humankind. Mm-hmm. So we haven't come up with that yet. So to the extent that we can't know that, everything is irrelevant. I call myself a practical atheist because to me the question of God's existence is meaningless until we can figure out how we would possibly know what this being wants. The story of Abraham to me is a great theological lesson, because what it says is, even if you think you know what God wants, even if he's told you exactly what he wants, you could be dead wrong. He just could be toying with you, testing with you, whatever. And the concept of God, if you take the big Aquinas-style concept of God, you've got a being who, is different from us in every way. This is not a material being. This being does not live in time, and therefore does not act in any meaningful way that we understand the term act. And he said, if you want to take his words from the Bible, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So how are we supposed to come to any conclusions about what this being wants from us in terms of our behavior, even if we could assume that he does exist, which I'm not even granting that. But even if you grant that, you're screwed. Now, in terms of all of the other stuff, the failure is institutionalized religion, really, because it's about, religion from the get-go is about keeping knowledge from people. Right. The story of Adam and Eve in the garden, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. Religion throughout the ages has continually tried to keep people ignorant. People don't realize this, but it was literally a crime for quite a while. Under penalty of death, you could literally be murdered for possessing a Bible during Christianity's reign. Right. The desire to keep things, Galileo said something very simple. The earth revolves around the sun. And for that, he spent the rest of his life in prison. Giuseppe Bruno went to the stake. There are people who don't want you to know. Religion is all about controlling the supply of information, knowledge. And what you have happening in free societies now like ours is it's unstoppable. People are getting access to stuff, and the internet is really helping that. Okay.
And I say that, I've always said for the longest time, in the end, science trumps religion. But then you look at what's going on in Texas with the school books, and you have the narrow-minded theocrats in Texas are saying, no, we don't want people to understand evolution. We want to teach creationism. So while I think that science in the end trumps religion, that might be 1,000 years from now, Brian.
Well, it does. We do have to. This is why I do think people have to start to stand up and speak out and be counted. As even if you're just a reasonable, non-fundamentalist believer, you got to start coming out against that stuff, because in the end it may hurt you, but this stuff is nuts. Controlling. I just heard about a kid who went to catechism, where in a particular church where they taught them that there can be no fossils older than 6,000 years old, because God created the world and the earth 6,000 years ago, and for everything to work in the theology, that has to be the case. Right. Because if things died before that, then they didn't die because of Adam's sin, and then therefore why do you need Jesus? This is a thread where if you start to pull it, the whole thing unravels. Right. And that is why people don't want, religious Christians do not want evolution being taught, because it is, in essence, the final nail in the coffin for the Christology that so many people have institutionalized and institutionally bought into.
Okay, let's get back to the show for just a second. Look, you obviously have read quite a bit of the Bible. I've read quite a bit of the Bible. The Bible is so chock full of silly stories. Is it hard to pick which to do for the Mr.Deity series?
It's I don't base the show so much on stories as I do on ideas and concepts.
Okay.
When I hear people, a lot of times I'll just hear someone will make a comment on YouTube. Someone made a comment about the presumption of naturalism, which is how science is done.
Sure.
You have to presume naturalistic, cause and effect for
Sure.
things, because if you don't, you can't do science, because everything ends in, and then God did it. Basically, and so
Right.
I wrote Mr. Deity in the equation, which is E equals Mr. Deity did it. T equals Mr. Deity did it. C equals Mr. Deity did it. There's a famous comic where a guy has just this most elaborate scientific equation written out on a chalkboard, and then down at the bottom it says, and then a miracle occurs. Well, if you don't presume naturalism, you can't get anywhere in the sciences, because what you end up doing is saying, well, it's just we can't understand it, we can't know it. The whole presumption of science is that these are naturalistic things that happen and that we can gain knowledge of them. Once again, what are we back to? Knowledge, and trying to remove people's ability to gain knowledge. So it's generally concept driven. Every now and then I'll take a story. We have two kinds of fans of the show. Ones who really want me to just go
Right.
on commentary and kind of critique of biblical thinking, and the others who like just the common kind of comedy stuff. And for me, this last season, the John the Baptist episode, I thought, there's a funny story. Here's a guy who's had his head chopped off. Mr. Deity is a guy who doesn't like to turn on his all-knowingness. So he's just letting him hang, in essence. He's still bodiless. It's hard for me to say that. I still want to say headless. He's still bodiless after, heaven knows how long, because they're just not, Mr. Deity's so self-absorbed. He hates turning on his all-knowingness, won't even do it for his buddy.
He is kind of a self-absorbed prick, I gotta say.
Yeah, well, you know what? I try to stay true to the character,